Welcome everybody to our cloud booking webinar, and thank you very much for joining us today. The Great Workplace Mashup is the second in our hybrid workplace series. The hybrid workplace continues to be a hot topic for many organizations. However, as we know, one size does not fit all, and it's key for each organization to deliver a version of hybrid that's right for their people and their business. Based on our recent YouGov survey, we know that 50% or more of employees want a mix of home, office, and other public spaces going forward. Achieving this requires a seamless alignment of the physical workspace and digital workplaces too. Pre-pandemic, IT ran the digital workplace and facilities ran the physical workplace. However, through the pandemic, we've seen many IT and facility teams join forces as they identified a lot of duplicated effort, but also saw that they were striving to achieve the same outcome, which was productive and happy employees with the freedom to communicate, collaborate, and work in a way that works best for them. In today's webinar, we'll examine why this collaboration was necessary in order to deliver the hybrid workplace of today. Today, I am joined by an esteemed panel with vast and varied experience in workplace management and workspace technology. I'd like to introduce you to, first of all, Colette Temminck. Colette currently serves on the board of directors for IFMA, the International Facilities Management Association, and as Chief Strategy and Product Officer at Blue Sky, IBE or BSI. And prior to co-founding BSI, Colette was President of Property Services at Eden, Global Head of Integrated Facilities Management for Cushman & Wakefield, and Senior Vice President and Chief Administration Officer at Apollo Education Group. Welcome, Colette, and thanks for joining us today. I'd also like to welcome Darren Hill. Darren is ITS Unified Communications at Kimberly-Clark, with a KC career spanning across an incredible 30 years. During this tenure, Darren has worked in many strategic, operational, engineering, and enterprise architecture roles before his move into leadership within global service platforms. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you.
And also we've got Vanessa Darcy, who for over 13 years has served as a facilities lead for the UK's largest integrated digital retailer and financial services provider, The Very Group, who have been serving customers for over 100 years. Welcome to Vanessa, and thanks very much to you all for joining us today. So we've got a series of questions and topics to talk through with our panel. So I'll be raising those questions and I'm sure contributing to the discussion and the debate myself. So first of all, Vanessa, from experience, how did IT and facilities work together pre-pandemic, and how has this changed through the pandemic?
We've spoken about this before, and IT and FM, what I find is we came together when a project deemed it necessary, and that was usually when our worlds overlapped. So the physical space and the virtual needed to come onto projects, and we came in, we did our input, we contributed, and then we went back to our relevant worlds, and wouldn't come back together again until a project manager lead would bring us back together and rumbled along like all departments in work. And I would say that was our only sort of comings together since obviously during the pandemic, I think is when I noticed the change at the Very Group. Our offices closed, our people still needed to work. And it began with getting the business to move on 10 years, because prior to that, especially with what we do as a business, people didn't work at home. They worked in the office, and the office was set up for that. It was chicken runs of people inside the building, as many people as you could get in, and the technology relevant to being at a static desk day in, day out. So the first was we had to get that technology to people's homes, so we came together with that. But what we quickly realised as we started to build the hybrid model of today is that we were off doing very similar projects in silo, and didn't even know we were doing the same thing with our partners. So IT would be off with their partners creating an app or a sort of service desk. And when we started to work with cloud booking, that summed us up. We went off on our own as a facilities department, looked what we needed, found Jerry in cloud booking, cracked on with it. And the first IT knew of it was when I needed cloud booking to talk to them to deliver the goal. And they would come in at the end. And what we found as we needed to build the hybrid model and get people able to work from home is actually we'd gone off to do our own thing, but we're duplicating work. And we needed to become cohesive. We needed to share our knowledge, but more, if we didn't duplicate, we could pool our resource and achieve things quicker. Because the one thing the pandemic's done is we need to do things quicker. So the critical pathway had to be cut. And the cohesiveness of FM with the physical environment and the other platforms speeded that up. And we realised we overlapped on a lot of things. And the biggest thing is we actually removed the mystery of what we each did. And, you know, FM, you know, is very often only attractive to FM, as you know, often when I'm asked what to do, I can see people's eyes glazing over, and IT were no different. And I'll be honest, I still hear words in IT that I think I can't admit, I don't know what that means. We broke that down and we got to know the characters, we got to know them as people, not just deliveries of kit. And that's the biggest thing, is the resources pooled, we get things done quicker, we do them together, we've developed the relationship, we've broken the barriers, and we've removed the mystery of both departments, and we're confident to approach each other and not see each other as threats. We've both got the same goal. We don't have to get there first, let's get there together.
That's a really positive outcome, I think, isn't it, for that kind of collaboration?
Yes.
I know. I mean, because we, as you know, we've always been primarily a home-based business, and it's really hard to kind of get the culture and maintain it and what have you. But what's really impressed me with all of our clients, you know, is how quickly you guys all adapted to it. You know, it was remarkable. It really was a fast turnaround. So, you know, well done to everybody. But Darren, do you agree with the idea that the workplace, the digital and workspace, the physical, have to come together? So, and if you do, sort of to what extent?
Yeah, no, I think it's key, especially with this hybrid workforce. It's driving the need for tighter integration of the workspace and a workplace. My personal example is I work from home a lot. I have for the past 5 years. And as COVID came along and my peers all went home, they started experiencing the same, I'll call it interaction capability. Everybody's on their own individual tile on a screen. And when people needed to use a whiteboard, and that's one of my favorite examples, they would bring up an electronic whiteboard and draw on it. My pet peeve is when they're back in the office, I know what they're going to do is they're going to turn to the side wall and they're going to start drawing on their wall. And I'm chicken liver here. I say, hey guys, you know, I can't see what you're drawing. Can you go back and use the same technology we've been using? And for them, you know, in the room, that's not the natural workflow. That's not convenient. They just want to pick their marker up and draw. So what I see bringing this together is we're experimenting right now with some whiteboard technologies, digital whiteboard technologies that basically they meld themselves into the meeting as a participant. You start drawing on it and it becomes part of the display. So the people who are remote, whether they're in another conference room someplace else or they're at home like me, I'll be able to see what they're drawing. And the technology we're using, we're trying to ensure that the people who are working from home have the ability to go in and draw on that same surface so that we can interact, a two-way inking. So we're pretty excited about that. And that's, I think, a good example of bringing the workplace and the workspace together. Another example, again, getting back to these large conference rooms with those now digital whiteboards, you're still looking down a bowling alley table. And you've got these people all sitting down further and further away. You can't really see the expressions on the people's faces at the far end of the table. And for me, I'm a person who likes to, I find puns in just about everything people say, and people will say things and not see it. And I say that I see dead jokes, kind of that sixth sense kind of thing. So in sixth sense, as in a sixth sense, I just see these bad jokes and I can't resist putting them out there. I need to see everybody's faces so they can see their collective groan. Because if they're sitting in the back of the room, I can't really see them. All right. So I know that's probably a bad way to spin that, but the idea that some of these new cameras that are coming out, these AI cameras, can actually spot each of the individual people and give them a tile, just like we're experiencing in this conference.
Yeah.
And bring them into the meeting so that the remote participants as well as the local participants can see everybody in an equitable manner. So those are just a couple of examples of some of the emerging workspace technologies that I think are going to improve and drive that integration.
It's really interesting because, as you say, that kind of, a lot of the original video conference setups were bespoke to that client, to that customer, and the only way to be in on those conference calls was to be in a room, in one of their offices somewhere in the world, and thank God we've moved on a long way from that. We'll talk a bit more about Teams and Zoom and things of that nature soon, but yeah, I think what's interesting, what I hear is that shift towards people collaborating from any space, that sounds like it's permanent, right? That's not like a thing you're doing to get through pandemic. This is a change in work habits, something I believe was going to come for many years.
It's a message loud and clear from our facilities team, is that we need to drive that. And that's, again, bringing to the point earlier was we're working together. We're not working standalone anymore. We're really working tightly together.
Interesting. So Colette, can you point to any examples for us of excellence in how IT and facilities have successfully worked together to enable their staff and their teams? And conversely, can you think of any times when it didn't work particularly well?
It's interesting, the topic. So there's examples of the value of IT and facilities coming together that's been recognized by corporate real estate leaders for a long time. So as way of example, CoreNet did a study, CoreNet Corporate Real Estate 2020. I believe it was back in 2012 when this began. They brought leaders together to kind of anticipate what 2020 would look like. And the concept of this super nucleus came about, which was this combination of HR, IT, and real estate collaborating. And the thought was it was really a premise around high-performing organizations would demand more kind of strategic alignment in the delivery of this space. And it was interesting. We've now gone, almost a decade, and we're starting to see that accelerate because of the pandemic, but also because of the digital workplace and smart building technology. And now the infrastructure is catching up to that kind of concept and premise. So it'll be interesting if you flash forward another 10 years, what that's going to look like. Does that mean that, facilities and IT are going to be one organization? Are they going to be one organization with HR under a shared service? I do think it's going to change. I do think the enablement of individuals, whether they're working from home and one day and they go into the office, that the IT tools that they're going to be using for collaboration that, was mentioned earlier, it clearly needs to come together in this seamless delivery, because we're in the business, so, facility managers along with IT to really support the worker and enable their productivity. And we have to work together to make that happen going forward. If I think back on my own experience, sitting first day on the job, I have my desk, but I don't have my computer, and you wait 2 or 3 days. So it even goes down to just the simplest delivery, right? Are you sitting in a conference room and the AV doesn't work and you're like, is it IT? Is it FM? You put in a work order, and where does that go? Because they have 2 different work order systems. So it needs to come together. I think we've all recognized it. I commend Vanessa for really taking that leap forward and saying, let's partner together to make it happen for the betterment of the organization, and kind of being the first to lead that in her group. So it's only been a few workers, so good for you.
I can't imagine Vanessa ever using the term, have you tried turning it off and on again, though? That's a key requirement for IT, right?
Control-Alt-Delete.
Maybe we won't make the full transition. Who knows? But it's interesting. So for years, I've seen this kind of in all our clients as well, or most of them, the same kind of intercompany conflict between the team that manages all things external, like meetings and events and conferences that happen outside the business, and the FM team that manage the meeting rooms and desks and what have you inside the business. And those two always kind of blame each other. If you had a better system, we wouldn't have to go outside for meeting rooms and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's maybe another area for us to focus on in the future, to get those guys collaborating together too, particularly now, given that there's this kind of crossover between it being accepted that people work from places other than their own office. So who knows? We'll see. So Vanessa, going forward, what do you think is the key criteria for success now? And can we create a blueprint for bringing together the physical workplace and digital workspace in the future?
So you can hear this phrase a lot, but what I've started to say is the time is now, and the learnings are now. We did a lot of preparation for our teams coming back, and we rebuilt our offices for exactly that, because we had this once in a lifetime chance to have nobody in the building and pull it apart and build for what we thought they needed. Now what we have to do is learn, right, we've built this beautiful place on what we think from the surveys and what you've told us and the feedback, because we kept in contact with them at home and surveyed them at home and said, how are you feeling? What's working for you? What's not? What can we do better? And we built what we thought. Now we have to, that's almost like a foundation. We have to open our ears again now and start listening again, and say, this is what we've built. Now, what I find myself saying is we need to make it functional now. And exactly what you mentioned before is to try and stop everyone going, right, now I'm back in the office, I'll do what I always did in the office, and let go of, let's say, a year and a half at home. But for the business, we've moved on 10 years. Let's please not go backwards. And for me, that's the blueprint. I can't say today what will work. What I can say today is I'm listening and I'm learning. And what our leaders are saying is the blueprint for the physical and digital sits with us as individuals. Go where you need to work for the task you're doing. Don't tick a box. Don't say, I'm doing this today, I'm doing that tomorrow. What work do you need to do, and what will aid you to do it? And if that's coming into the workplace and collaborating and just hooking up with your colleagues, and focusing yourself on collaboration and it sounds, you have to be careful with the words, the touchy-feely. I want to touch a whiteboard that actually isn't digital, and that's okay as long as you're not dialing someone in. And I've seen people with their laptops turning it around. No, please, no, we have to do better than that. We can't have moved on 10 years and then go back 10 years. We must continue to learn, listen. I watched the previous webinar where you guys were discussing round rooms, because it's exactly as you say, if you crack a joke, you need to see if it's landed well, or if you need to curb it and go down a different road. But what we do know is the task is the deciding factor. If you have people in work, out of work, would it be better for you all to go in if that's the task needed? Don't try and make something fit. Let's not say, I work from home, I've always worked from home, I'm going to carry on working from home. If 7 out of the 8 people are in the office, let's come in and do it together. We've got the rooms, we've got the space, but technology is still key. We've now got it, we've bought it, we must continue to develop it. We have lots of Microsoft hubs, we've changed our wordings, we haven't got meeting space, we've got digital zones, link in, but continue to see what's out there.
Interesting, because I think it's the change of use of the office, isn't it? That's what I can't wait to see evolve, especially with younger people, because you ask younger people, where do you want to work? Wherever I like. Because why should I have to go into a building to do what I do every day? Don't you trust me?
Yeah.
You know, it's a different mindset, and I can't wait to see how it all kind of pans out. But Colette, what do you think? Do you think there are any risks? You know, what do we need to watch out for? Where can teams go wrong with this kind of approach?
You know, I do think there's risk. I think there's risk in talent. I think, you know, Vanessa alluded to this a little bit, is really understanding the infrastructure that needs to be managed going forward. You know, there's a few studies out there that say, you know, up to 40 to 50% of facility managers could retire in the next few years, or their retirement eligibility. Will they? Still to be determined, but there's certainly trying to understand what the next few years of the workforce will look like. You couple that with, you know, KPMG study that showed that, you know, 80% of leaders were really focused on digital transformation, you know, accelerating their business through the pandemic. And then others like Fresh Code that said, you know, noted there was 80% of the commercial real estate, you know, investors anticipated that prop tech was going to have an impact on the industry. So you take those three things, you know, talent, transformation, and, you know, infrastructure and technology, and you realize who's going to be managing this space going forward. You know, the world of smart building technology requires a different set of skills for facility managers. And being able to manage that infrastructure in the future, are we going to be hiring from the IT community as part of that? You know, some of the best organizations and CRE groups have harnessed that, where they've been able to balance that talent and understand who's going to be carrying out these tasks. So I do think competencies and the competencies of facilities management and IT are going to change in the future. You know, risks of not harnessing data insights, I think, is another area. Think about the data and information that you can receive around a hybrid work. How do people work when they're in the office? You know, they're going to use quiet space, that you're going to use conference rooms, you know, that kind of activity-based working. And how do you enable that going forward? And how do you share that information? You know, if they're using certain technologies to collaborate, and they're using more of it in a private setting or in a quiet setting versus a conference room, that information has to be shared between IT and facilities management. So huge opportunity to harness that through kind of data governance and what they're going to use that information for, especially around the example that you used earlier, apps, right?
Yeah.
If you each have apps, how do you bring them together, and how do you share that information?
Interesting. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's because I think it's intriguing, you know, because to me, I'd never understand why the technology presents itself as such. And I don't find it difficult personally, but I'm a technical person. But why, for people who aren't technical, you know, why it isn't just more intuitive and step by step, you know, and easier to use. And you hear, you know, like I was on a call earlier on a Zoom call for the first time in I don't know how long, you know, and it kept freezing. Well, maybe we should switch to Teams. And the person I was talking to was like, oh, I haven't got Teams. And then I'm thinking, well, you know, there's 15 minutes of our discussion lost while this person goes to set it up. So, you know, I think that's where the importance of the technology being easier to use and, you know, just becoming more intuitive in the workplace. So, Darren, what technologies are high performing teams using currently to enable this new kind of hybrid way of working? You touched on a few things earlier on. Are there any other examples you can give us?
Oh yeah, several. But in general, you know, I see people are buying into these office suites or these workspace products like Microsoft Teams, Google Workspace, Cisco WebEx Teams, Slack. And those, you know, those are the workspace technologies. You know, they're pretty easy to recognize. You've heard of them. But the things that I think are a little more lower, and to your point, is, you know, as you go into an office, the kinds of technologies that we're working with facilities to deliver is, you know, for instance, hot desking, right? Everybody's bringing in PCs are turning over every, you know, 3 years. So every 3 years you're getting different models in, and you might actually change vendors.
Yeah.
So you need to find, you know, you can't put a docking station at every one of these hot desks because it's constantly changing. And Macs and PCs don't always like to coexist on the same technologies. So finding that sweet spot, what is that? So we've standardized on large sized USB-C based monitors that can both display the content and power the PC. again, to help the employees so that when they come in, they've got a simple way in and a simple way out, meaning they plug in their PC to that USB-C connector. Okay, they don't even have to pull out their power brick. Okay, they just connect up, and now their content is showing. They can open their laptop and see on a second monitor some of the content and share that. We've emphasized go wireless on everything. Wireless headset that brings you good headset fidelity. Okay, so you've got sound blocking, automatic noise cancellation, and a good microphone that will block out noise around you. Putting on your iPod, headset, it picks up all the ambient noise. They're great. They pick up everything though. So you're going to hear the copier and you're going to hear everything in the office space. So get the right equipment, wireless mouse, wireless keyboard, your own keyboard, because we don't want to be sharing germs anymore. At KC, we've always been that way. We've had hand wash and hygiene is kind of our middle name. So you'll see our products all around emphasizing that. So even in the workspace, we emphasize have your own keyboard. I don't know if you've seen the studies about the keyboard is dirtier than, well, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, point is a lot of wireless, make it easy for people to get in, get out, and to share content, etc. So those are a few of the things that kind of comes to the top of my, Wi-Fi. You mentioned you need to know where people are congregating. That's where facilities needs to know where they need more seats maybe, or more air conditioning. That's where we need more Wi-Fi. So that's shared data that we need to be able to have between us because we're an all Wi-Fi shop. So again, those are a few of the key things that pop to my head, top of mind for me.
Thank you, because I like to kind of look at the stats, because obviously, as I said, we're a company that works mostly remotely. So we have 60 people, all working in different locations. So each month we kind of look at probably you guys probably dwarf all these numbers, but in terms of our use, and we've been on Teams, and N365 for years now. But just in the last 30 days, we've done over 2,000 hours of audio, over nearly 1,800 hours of video, nearly 700 hours of screen sharing, and we've swapped between us over 61,000 messages, all via Teams between us, which is just crazy. So, I guess it's interesting, right? Because whenever I do these things, most of the comments I get back from people are, really enjoyed the webinar you did. Very interesting. How on earth do you keep a culture when everybody works remotely? How do you do that? And everybody's been kind of trying to figure out their own way to do it over the last few years. So we talked a little bit earlier on about, and I'm really interested in this, the stronger relationship between IT and facilities, creating a partnership and efficiencies with less duplication. So where do you think we can achieve that kind of partnership and create less duplication of effort, Vanessa?
Again, it's important we don't go back to our silos. We continue to work together. Like Darren says, we are so integrated in what we need to deliver because hopefully there will always be workspaces, otherwise FM, will, never mind retire, disappear. The research and what we've heard is the hybrid will allow for all age groups, because what we know is we've got to keep hitting the mark for everyone. And way back, we all remember the Googles and the Microsofts of the world were the first to look at their office spaces and throw out what the rest of us, and some still have. They had slides in their offices, to the extreme, and were laughed at sometimes, oh, that won't work, it's a fad, a bit like, way back when somebody said, laptops wouldn't work, or, along those lines. And you've got to look at those companies and say they were IT type companies. They don't have physical things. The challenge we have at the Very Group is we still have dresses, shoes, boots, toys, ovens, sofas, Apple products, trainers, wedding dresses, garden furniture. So we're still very much in the physical world. We still need fulfillment sites. So we are very physical. So we have to link in with IT to keep that efficiency strong, so we don't go back to working in silos, and we share the way forward. The big thing IT are always asking of me, Vanessa, can we do that on an app? You do this, but can you get it on an app? We want you to do it on your phone. And, oh, Vanessa, you've got this, but you manage worldwide travel. We need that on a phone. And before the pandemic and before all of this, I have to hold my hands up. I'd have probably not seen the value of what we see today, of working with them. I didn't work against them, and vice versa. The mystery of the FMA toilets, I get that all the time. What we've learned is actually our shared way forward and our shared drive is the same. We're coming from different elements, but that's okay. But stay delivering together, keep talking, and also learn that what I'm trying to do today, IT might have been trying to do it yesterday, and stay working together. I now sit with the IT teams. I don't sit every day with the FM teams. And when I'm trying to drive an initiative, I bring them in at the beginning, not halfway or when technology dictated it, and prevent duplication. Duplication is a killer. It's a killer of moving forward, and it takes us backwards. So it reduces man hours. So for me, I think we had covered it before, and it's along those lines, definitely.
Interesting, because I think when we were in the midst of the pandemic, particularly the sort of the lockdowns that we experienced in the UK, I thought the important thing for me was just to make our staff feel like they mattered, because they were at home anyway, right? But it was just a strange time, so we introduced all these kind of new initiatives, to just try and give them like just something as simple as an amount of money for everybody to do something interesting, in that year. So we've had people who've one of our developers has had singing lessons. Other people have done horticultural lessons. One of our guys has learned to fire a crossbow and teach other people how to fire a crossbow too. So, and that just gave people something else to focus on. For what can I do with that money? And I think it's little things like that, I think that matter. And because I want to sort of talk a little bit about the people impact of all this, and you mentioned earlier on about Google and Microsoft. And I remember the story of the guy that, as a little experiment, I'm sure, decided to see if he could live at the Google campus for a year and managed to stay there without leaving it for 12 months, which is amazing. So on that human aspect, Colette, do you think can the employee well-being and experience be enhanced through this IT facilities partnership?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Right. As you return to the office and you look at more employee-centric services, right, that companies are considering, how do those services also enable, connectivity, but they're going to have to be brought by both FM and IT, right? If you want a mobile app to book a conference room, but you want to use that same mobile app to, book a concierge service, or, can I reserve my lunch along with, a particular room? This underlining, technology is going to help both, but it's really going to be almost as we move to, the consumer, the employee. How do we provide this productive environment, but one that they're excited about coming to, right? And enabling that technology with those services. That's going to require IT and FM to come together to make sure that happens, both from the services perspective and from the technology perspective. So, I think in that sense, the future's bright for both organizations to work together and learn from each other. As Vanessa said, sometimes we're speaking different languages, but clearly we're going to have to speak the same language to serve the employees, to find those locations. If you're acquiring a new location and you want to put in smart building technology or other types of technologies, you're going to have to work together almost for the full life cycle of the property, right? From the acquisition all the way to disposition. So it's going to be interesting, but I also think that the company itself could benefit. So you think about car parking, right? And the information that's available, they could use it for reporting, for commuting. They could look at, compare it against badge data, who's actually coming in with a car versus public transportation. So I think it's endless in the sense of the benefits both to the employees and the company itself.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you. So, Darren, what about the future? Do you think there'll be further collaborations? Other departments getting in on this kind of new love-in between our IT and our facilities colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we're already starting to experience some new parties coming to the table to chat with us. And of course, one group is coming back for seconds, giving a second round of this, and I'll get to that in a second here. So HR is certainly taking an interest in workspace adoption and the engagement metrics. We also recently have been pushed hard to work closely with legal because they're concerned about chat, persistent chat. How long are you going to keep it? Video recordings. Do we really want to record a meeting? Transcripts from those meetings, because what people say in meetings often is more casual than they might say in public. How long do you want to keep that information around? So there's a lot of engagement with our legal team. All of it's based off of these IoT devices, which, to what Colette was talking about, was the communications piece. So our team's responsible for not only the Wi-Fi, but for the cellular coverage in the facilities. And now we're looking at some of these new technologies coming using LoRa. And we have to understand what our networking airspace looks like, and the different tools are using different technologies to communicate, and how we provide all of these different backhaul networks to pull that information out of these washrooms, out of the conference rooms. How many people are in the conference room? Do we use the video endpoints to measure how many people are in there? So there's a lot of additional value that we're going to be able to provide to facilities, and I see the integration with the sensors in these conference rooms and taking those and connecting them up to the workspace to understand, when's the meeting scheduled in here? Do I really need to warm the meeting room up or cool it down to make it comfortable for people until I know that they're coming? So maybe 5 minutes before a meeting, you can crank up or down the temperature, whatever needs to be done. People don't show up, they ghost the meeting, and then the sensors are telling you there's nobody here. Let's drop that temperature back to let it float back to the ambient. And there's a lot of green value there for the company. So that again gets back to facilities. So I see the opportunities in facilities, a second round of involvement continuing, but I also see these other teams, legal, HR, continuing to have interest in what we're doing.
Interesting. Vanessa, Colette, anything to add? Any other thoughts from you guys on that one?
I think you touched on something I think that we're really noticing in the past 2 weeks, because we've only just started to ramp up. I've got about 600 people in one building now that, previously had 1,200. That information is absolutely key, because we have a lot of lights on, and it sounds really boring and basic, but previously we had to have all those lights on. Now it's what we've all had a much more focused view on, do we need all these lights on if I've still only got 600 people in a building designed for 1,200 and the main people are on the ground floor, and I've got these beautiful spaces and beautiful breakout areas and technology everywhere just burning away. So again, linking it to it being more smart, like Colette says, smart building, powering it down, monitoring it, and that is definitely where FM and IT will continue to be strong, and build that technology within, and not always have to look outside. What I've realised, the value of our IT department, historically we go out for that. you know, and go and get a specialist in the field, and that still may be correct. But now I'd go to our IT department and say, this is what I'm thinking, you know, can we look at this? And the talent as individuals in the team, you wouldn't have known previously. I wouldn't have even known half of their names. And someone will go, I can build that. And it's not the very group person saying that, that's Liam, the individual, saying, I could build that for you. And that, I think, is invaluable going forward as we learn more about our buildings and what we need to achieve in this bigger changing world, definitely.
And I would echo that. Just going back to the talent discussion, you know, whether what percentage you look at of FMs that can retire over the next few years are eligible, bringing people together, that diversity of thought around a solution and having different disciplines at the table, you get to a better solution, as Vanessa just alluded to. So there's new ideas, new solutions that you haven't thought of in facilities management. And sometimes, you know, we continue to deliver the same services until someone tells us, you know, there's actually a better way to do this, and I can help you do that. And partnering is a great way to get there. So
interesting, because I think one potential risk pattern I see is where you've got the senior executives will always have a desk. You know, like in our world, in meeting rooms and desks and what have you, they have no conception that there's a problem booking meeting rooms because they never have one. Right? I'm in a meeting room. Oh, and there it is. But I think the idea that you could end up in a situation where particularly younger people who are kind of often in more difficult circumstances in terms of their living accommodation. You know, one of our guys said to me what he found the hardest was living in a shared house in London and working in the same room that he slept in. You know, he found that really difficult. And I think I'd hate to see us, you know, businesses using this change in habit to take a kind of solely financial view of the workplace. So thinking, well, we can bin off all this real estate, you know, and then have a much smaller set of offices and tell all the junior staff they can work somewhere else. And I really hope that doesn't happen. So, you know, I was thinking about the potential for a role of something like a chief workspace officer, you know, who works across all these multiple functions and kind of like, you know, brings you all together like a kind of digital shepherd, if you like. So could you see a role of something like that? Start with Vanessa. I'd be really interested to hear your views on it, Darren and Colette too. But Vanessa, what are your thoughts on a sort of chief workplace officer type role?
I had the same overarching name for it as you, a shepherd. I think the scope for the role is extremely wide, and what history has taught me is sometimes when the scope is so wide, you can be you're good at lots of things, but the scope is huge for this because the person would have to have such gravitas because they almost need to sort of command to be listened to because they're going to go across such a spectrum of people. They've also got to be creative, and lots of people have said, would it be an FMer? Are they creatives? Are FMers creatives? And I get this all the time. You know, my hubby is a writer and, you know, an illustrator, and we are so different with the way we approach life. And this role, sort of the way I was thinking about it last night, is you've almost got to be a jack of all trades, with an ability to then bring all the trades together and allow them to listen to each other. So do I see the role? Yes. Is it a project manager role? You know, because though, you know, I don't know if Colette agrees with me, sometimes when you've been in facilities a long time, they have to be quite clear boxes for me, and then I can drive forward with it. And that's why I think some people will believe a facilities person isn't the person. Is it an HR person? Is it an IT driven person? It is all of those for me. And I think today you would struggle to fill this role in a year's time, I think there will be lots of people that could fill this role, because we in facilities are changing, IT is changing, and I think IT, HR and facilities are coming together, and then that to me can sum up the Chief Workplace Officer. But also, does the Chief Workplace Officer have a long-term role, or is it somebody that comes in when we need to do something like a PM does and drive us forward and get the ideas across and get us all to speak? And then they're not needed. Do they work on, what do they work on after that? So I think it's very early stages. Do I see someone like that? I think time will tell. Time will tell.
It'll be, as you say, though, it's really difficult to think what background they might come from, and maybe the people that would do that job, their backgrounds are being forged through this change over the last 18 months.
Yeah, they are being built now.
Yeah, I think so, and I do think it's a really important role, because particularly if you've got people, if you have a policy that says, actually now that we've downsized a little bit, you can only come into the office 3 days a week. The other 2 days you've got to work somewhere else, but it doesn't have to be at home. Then that person's job is going to be to also facilitate what that looks like. Where do all these people go? What's the criteria for allowing them to work from a serviced office somewhere or a hotel? And I think all of that stuff it's a fascinating area of policy that's going to come out of this and evolve. But Darren, Colette, what are your thoughts on this whole area of the future?
Go ahead, Colette.
Yeah, I would agree. This is a leader that's going to have competencies in HR, IT, across the board, facilities management. Whether they're being grown now, it would be interesting if they even rotate through these departments. But I think it's gonna require someone that really has some strong leadership skills, and then bringing potentially the three groups together to take a look at what the future of the workplace really needs, and how to make that happen. So it's going to be an interesting future, I think, but it's one that many people are excited about, and they're looking forward to the changes coming. So
I think it sounds like a great job, personally. I really do. So Darren, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, I haven't thought much about this. I'm intrigued by the comments that we're hearing. I know there are a lot of CXO type positions emerging in the organization. We've just invited a new CTO to join our organization. So Chief Workplace Officer, intriguing idea. I definitely think that they need to be a person who can collaborate across the different areas, because we still do operate in silos, especially in a large company. Bringing that together is going to require that collaboration at the very high level. And if that level, they're rotating people through different types of roles. Even my manager, he's taking on new roles, absorbing new technology in technologies. A lot of the workspace technologies he's being consumed into his purvey. So the whole idea of IT being part of every CXO type role in the organization is something that I'd probably be more intrigued to understanding how you drive that knowledge, not just into a CWO, but across the entire tier, so they have an appreciation for the difficulties of some of the decisions that get made, and the challenges that we face in the IT organization. Because at the end of the day, it all has to be knit together. Technology's everywhere.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So we're coming to the end of our hour, unfortunately. So I just want to really, I guess, wrap up by saying what an absolute pleasure it is, and really informative to hear from people who are actually living with this and being part of the pioneering group that are plotting our way through this course, literally every day of your life. So it was fascinating to hear your thoughts and your comments, and thank you so much for your contribution. I really appreciate it. So thank you again to Darren, Colette, and Vanessa. It was a real pleasure spending time with you today, and thanks again. Take care. And thank you all for watching. We'd appreciate any comments or any feedback you've got on the session we've just been through, and look forward to seeing you for the next one. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, fantastic stuff. Thank you all so much. That was really, really good. Really, some really positive stuff come out of the session there. So I'm really grateful. And it was great to meet you, Darren, and lovely to see both you, Vanessa, and Colette once again. So thank you all for attending. I really appreciate
Lovely
it.
to meet you
Appreciate
all.
the invite. Stay
Have
safe.
a great day.
Good one. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.